A struggling single mom, desperate to find shelter for her son, asked a stranger for a ride on a stormy night. Little did she know, the man she approached was not just any stranger, he was a millionaire CEO, grappling with his own broken heart and a life that felt emptier than ever. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. On a rainy evening in New York City, Jack Harper, a successful CEO in his early 40s, sits in the back of his sleek black SUV, staring out the window. The constant hum of the city's bustle outside contrasts sharply with the silence within the car. His mind races with thoughts of the demanding meetings he had earlier that day, the constant pressure, and the loneliness that shadows him despite his wealth. He sighs, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his thoughts drifting to the emptiness of his penthouse. There's no one waiting for him at home, no one to share the victory of yet another business deal. A few miles away, Sarah Miller, a single mother in her mid-30s, stands on the side of the road, soaked to the bone. The rain falls relentlessly as she holds her young son, Ben, close to her chest, trying to shield him from the storm. Ben's small body trembles in her arms, and she can feel the weight of their struggles pressing down on her. She looks around, desperate for help, but the streets are empty, and no one stops. Her heart races as she wonders how much longer they can endure this. Jack's driver slows the car as they approach the busy intersection. The streets are slick, reflecting the city lights like a pool of liquid silver. As they drive past, Jack notices a woman standing on the sidewalk, her figure huddled under the weight of the storm. She's holding a child, no umbrella, no protection from the relentless rain. Jack's eyes linger for a moment, a flicker of concern crossing his face, but before he can give it more thought, the driver speeds up. "Keep going," Jack mutters, his mind still occupied with the day's events. He leans back in the plush leather seat, the weight of his success settling heavily on his shoulders. Despite the wealth, the power, the name he's made for himself, Jack feels more isolated than ever. He can't shake the feeling that he's missing something important, but he's not sure what it is. As the car moves forward, Jack feels an odd tug at his conscience. The woman and child are still there in his mind, standing in the downpour. He glances at the rearview mirror. There's still time. "Stop the car," Jack commands abruptly. The driver looks at him through the rearview mirror, unsure. "What? We don't have time for this." Jack's voice softens but carries an undeniable authority. "I said stop." The car comes to a halt. Jack opens the door, stepping out into the cold rain. The wet pavement reflects his silhouette as he strides toward the woman, his shoes slapping the wet ground. Sarah notices him approaching, her heart skipping a beat. She can barely make out his face in the rain, but the tall figure and well-tailored suit suggests someone from a world far removed from hers. She instinctively tightens her grip on Ben, her protective instincts kicking in. She's used to being on her own, and she's learned to be wary of anyone who might want something from her. Jack pauses a few feet away, catching his breath. His heart pounds unexpectedly. "Are you all right?" His voice is calm, but there's a subtle edge of concern. Sarah hesitates, her eyes darting around, searching for any sign of danger. She's not used to this kind of attention, especially from someone like him. I'm sorry to bother you," Sarah stammers, her voice shaking with both the cold and the uncertainty. We need a ride. I don't know where else to go." Her voice is barely audible above the rain. Jack studies her for a moment, the unease in her posture registering. He knows he could easily brush past this and continue on with his life. But something about her vulnerability, something about the way she holds her son, moves him. He doesn't know why, but he feels compelled to help. "You're not bothering me," Jack says firmly. Get in." He gestures to the open door of the car. Sarah looks at him in disbelief. She's used to rejection, used to people pretending they don't see her struggles. She looks down at Ben, whose eyes are wide with fear, and then back at Jack. For a brief moment, she hesitates. But in the end, her instincts as a mother outweigh her doubts. She can't keep standing here in the rain. She has no other choice. "Thank you," she murmurs, her voice a little stronger now. She gathers Ben in her arms and steps into the car, the warmth of the interior a stark contrast to the cold, wet streets outside. Jack closes the door behind them, his mind still processing the decision he just made. What had he just done? Something about Sarah's situation felt too familiar, too close to home. And though he didn't know it yet, this was just the beginning of a journey neither of them could have anticipated. The rain continues to pour as Jack drives them to his home, the windshield wipers working tirelessly to clear the stormy mist. Inside the car, the silence is heavy, with only the sound of the rain and the hum of the engine breaking it. Sarah sits in the back seat, cradling Ben in her arms, her face a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. She's been through so much already, and this unexpected act of kindness feels like a fleeting moment of relief in the chaos of her life. Jack's mind is in turmoil. He's tried to maintain control over every aspect of his life, his company, his success, his public image, but this encounter has left him unsettled. The last thing he expected was to pick up a stranger on the side of the road, let alone invite them into his home. But there's something about Sarah, the way she holds herself, her strength despite the obvious hardship, that tugs at his conscience. It reminds him of his own mother, who worked tirelessly to support him and his siblings when they were young. As they approach his mansion, a sense of unease settles in Jack's chest. He's not sure why, but letting strangers into his home, especially someone like Sarah, feels like an invasion of his privacy. The large, cold house has always been just that, cold. It's a space meant for status, not warmth. "Do you need anything?" Jack asks, breaking the silence. His voice is softer now, a hint of concern sneaking through. He glances at Sarah in the rearview mirror, but she quickly looks away, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "No, we're fine," she replies, her voice quiet but steady. Just getting out of the rain is enough." When they arrive at the house, Jack doesn't say much as he leads them inside. The mansion, with its high ceilings and expensive furnishings, feels even more sterile and uninviting now that there are guests, real people, in it. Sarah hesitates at the door, not sure where to go or what to do. She feels out of place, like she's intruding on a life she's never known. "Come on," Jack says, offering a polite but detached smile. "I have a guest house in the back. You can stay there for the night." Sarah looks at him, unsure. The idea of staying in such a lavish space doesn't sit right with her. She's used to cramped apartments, struggling to make ends meet. But tonight, there are no other options. She just wants to keep Ben safe and warm. "Thank you," she murmurs, her voice thick with gratitude. She doesn't know why Jack is doing this for them, but she knows they can't refuse his offer. Inside the guest house, the warmth is a welcome change. The space is comfortable, with soft lighting and a cozy bed that makes Sarah feel, for the first time in a long time, like they belong somewhere. She sets Ben down on the bed, wrapping him in a blanket. His eyes are already half closed from exhaustion, and she watches him sleep for a moment, her heart swelling with love and protectiveness. As Jack steps back to leave, he lingers for a second, his eyes on Sarah as she sits by Ben's side. There's a quiet strength in her, an unwavering devotion to her son that speaks volumes. It's a strength that Jack feels he's lost, buried under years of corporate pressure and personal loss. "I'll check in on you both in the morning," Jack says, his voice almost hesitant. Sarah nods, offering a small smile. "We'll be fine. Thank you again." Jack leaves the room, but something about the way Sarah looks at him lingers in his mind. For the first time in a long while, he feels a pull, an emotion that he's been ignoring for far too long. As he walks back to the main house, Jack can't shake the feeling that this night has marked the beginning of something much bigger than he ever expected. The days that followed were quiet, yet they felt different. Sarah and Ben had settled into the guest house, and Jack's life, though still filled with the usual rush of meetings and deadlines, had started to shift. He found himself thinking about them more than he cared to admit. The house felt fuller with their presence, even if they kept to themselves, rarely stepping into the main house unless absolutely necessary. One evening, Jack returned home earlier than usual, the weight of the day's negotiations still heavy on his mind. The house was unusually silent. His gaze moved across the vast, empty rooms, feeling the emptiness creep in again. He turned to leave when something caught his eye. The guest house lights were on. Curiosity got the best of him, and he quietly made his way toward it. When he reached the door, he hesitated for a moment, the sounds of muffled voices reaching his ears. It was Sarah. She was talking to Ben, her voice soft and soothing, like she was telling him a story. Jack stood still, captivated by the way Sarah's words seemed to fill the space with warmth, the kind of warmth the mansion had always lacked. Slowly, he stepped forward, but as he did, the door creaked slightly under his weight. Sarah's voice stopped abruptly. Jack froze, realizing he had disturbed a rare moment of peace. "Sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to intrude." Inside, Sarah was sitting on the bed next to Ben, her fingers gently running through his hair. Ben was already asleep, his small chest rising and falling with the rhythm of his breath. Sarah glanced up at Jack, and for the first time, Jack saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, a quiet sadness that spoke volumes. She had spent her life being strong, but in that moment, she let down her guard, and Jack couldn't help but feel moved. "You're not intruding," she replied softly, a faint smile on her lips. "I was just talking to him. He's had a rough time adjusting, but we're getting there." Jack nodded, but he didn't leave immediately. He stood in the doorway, not knowing what to say, but not wanting to turn away either. "How is he?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Better," Sarah replied. "He's a strong little guy, despite everything. But sometimes, I feel like I'm failing him. I know I can't give him everything, but I try my best." Jack's gaze softened. He could see how much she loved her son, how deeply she cared for his well-being. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. He wasn't used to seeing people so openly express their vulnerabilities, especially in a world where success often meant hiding your weaknesses. But Sarah wasn't like that. She wore her heart on her sleeve, and it made her stronger in ways Jack hadn't anticipated. "Sarah," Jack began, his voice quieter now, "you're not failing him. From what I can see, you're doing everything you can. More than most people would." Sarah looked up at him, surprise flickering across her face. "You think so?" Jack nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure why he was saying it. There was something about her, something that reminded him of his own mother, the sacrifices she'd made for him and his siblings. But more than that, there was a raw honesty in Sarah that Jack hadn't seen in a long time. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Jack stood there, silently observing, as Sarah continued to sit by Ben's side, her expression softened by the quiet peace of the room. In that instant, Jack realized that his perspective had shifted. This wasn't just about helping a stranger on a rainy night. It was about seeing life through a different lens, one that wasn't just focused on success and achievement. And somehow, Sarah had opened his eyes to a side of himself he had long neglected. "Good night," Jack said, his voice softer now, the words carrying a weight they hadn't before. "Good night," Sarah replied, her smile genuine, though there was still a trace of sadness behind her eyes. As Jack turned to leave, he realized that this was more than just an encounter, it was a turning point. He wasn't sure where it would lead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was on the edge of something meaningful. Something that would change him in ways he couldn't yet understand. The weeks that followed brought a subtle, but undeniable shift in both Sarah and Jack's lives. The mansion, once a cold and empty structure, now echoed with small sounds of life. Sarah, with her natural warmth, had started to bring a sense of balance to Jack's otherwise solitary existence. She cooked meals, tidied the guest house, and even began helping with small tasks around the main house. Though she was still cautious, her presence was a steady, comforting force, both for Ben and for Jack. Sarah, in turn, found a strange sense of stability in her new life. It wasn't permanent, and she didn't want to get used to the luxury that Jack's mansion represented, but it was a break from the constant struggle she had been living. Each morning, she would wake up early to make breakfast for Ben, and each evening, Jack would drop by to check in, offering polite conversation but always keeping a distance. Still, there was a shift in him, a subtle softening. She could feel it, even if he didn't acknowledge it. One evening, as Sarah was cleaning up after dinner, Jack entered the kitchen. His usually crisp and detached demeanor was slightly different, more open, perhaps, or at least less burdened. "Sarah," he began, his voice hesitant, "I've been thinking about something. You've done a lot around here, and you've made things more manageable. I wanted to offer you something." Sarah, wiping her hands on a towel, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Jack took a deep breath before continuing. "I know it's not much, but you could help me more regularly. I've got a couple of assistants who manage the housekeeping, but they don't have the attention to detail you have. I'm offering you a formal position, a real job here. Something more stable for you and Ben." Sarah blinked in surprise. "A job? Here?" Jack nodded, clearly hesitant but determined. "Yes. It's not much, but it's an offer. I could use someone like you in my household. If you're interested, of course." Sarah looked at him, her mind racing. She hadn't expected anything like this. The offer was generous, no doubt, but it was also complicated. She didn't want to feel indebted to Jack, nor did she want to lose sight of her independence. But the thought of a steady income, of a chance for Ben to grow up in a more stable environment, made her pause. "I don't know what to say," Sarah said slowly, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "This isn't what I was expecting. I'm grateful, Jack. Truly, I am. But I don't want to overstep. I don't want to be a burden." Jack shook his head, his expression softening. "Sarah, you're not a burden. I'm offering you an opportunity, one I think you deserve. You've proven you're more than capable. I'm just trying to give you a chance to help yourself, without any strings attached. You've got your own life, your own dreams. But maybe this is a step towards something better." There was a long pause before Sarah spoke again, her voice quieter now. "And you really think it'll make a difference?" Jack's gaze met hers, his eyes serious. "I do." The sincerity in his words made Sarah's heart soften. She wasn't sure what this offer meant for her future, but she knew that for the first time in a long time, she felt like someone saw her. Not just for what she could do for them, but for who she was. "I'll think about it," she said, giving him a small smile. "But thank you, Jack, for everything." Jack smiled back, a rare warmth in his expression. "Take your time. No rush." As Sarah watched him leave the kitchen, a quiet sense of hope settled in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, the possibilities seemed endless. Perhaps, with this new opportunity, she could finally start to rebuild her life. And maybe, just maybe, Jack was a part of that future, whether either of them realized it yet. The days grew longer, and as summer started to take hold, something between Sarah and Jack began to change. It wasn't immediate, nor was it obvious at first, but their interactions had slowly begun to shift. Jack, despite his usual distance, found himself checking in on Sarah more often. He watched as she seamlessly integrated into the routine of the house, tending to Ben's needs, organizing the home, and making meals that, though simple, filled the mansion with a comfort Jack hadn't realized he was missing. Her presence had brought a sense of warmth to the place, something that Jack couldn't ignore. But it wasn't just the house that was changing, it was him too. Jack noticed it in the way he started to look forward to his time with Sarah. Their conversations, once sparse and brief, became more frequent, lingering even after the workday was over. He started asking about her life, her past, her hopes. At first, Sarah was hesitant to open up. She had always been independent, had always kept her struggles to herself. But over time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable with Jack, sharing pieces of her life that she had locked away for so long. One evening, as they sat together on the back patio after dinner, the soft glow of the setting sun casting a golden hue over the garden, Jack found himself confessing something he hadn't admitted to anyone in years. "I've spent so much of my life chasing after success," he began, his voice low and almost reflective. "I thought that was all there was, business deals, acquisitions, building an empire. I thought that would make me happy. But I don't know. Lately, I've been questioning it all. I thought I could live without connections, without real relationships." Sarah turned to him, her gaze gentle. "And what are you finding now?" Jack paused, looking out over the garden, the silence between them comfortable yet filled with unspoken understanding. "I'm finding that it's not enough. I've been so focused on achievement that I forgot to live. To really live. To be part of something real." Sarah nodded, her heart catching in her chest. She could understand that. She had lived in the struggle for so long, had buried her own dreams and desires for Ben's sake, that she knew what it was like to lose sight of who you were. But she had also learned, through the hardships, that life wasn't about the things you could accumulate, it was about the people who cared about you, the bonds you formed, and the love you gave and received. "I think you're starting to understand," Sarah said softly. "But you don't have to figure it all out at once. It's a process." Jack turned to her then, his eyes searching hers. There was something different in the way he looked at her now, something softer, more genuine. "I'm not sure what the future holds, Sarah. But I do know that I'm not the same person I was when you first arrived here. You've changed me. You've made me see things differently." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat, a mix of gratitude and something more complicated stirring inside her. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected Jack to change in this way. But she could see it now, the shift in him, the openness that had replaced the guarded man she had first met. He was no longer the aloof CEO, buried in his world of business and power. He was someone real, someone vulnerable, someone who was willing to grow. "I'm glad," she said softly. I think we all have a lot of growing to do." Jack smiled at her then, a smile that reached his eyes, something genuine and unguarded. It was a rare thing for him, but it felt right. In that moment, as they sat together on the patio, the sound of the wind rustling the trees around them, Jack realized that the connection he had been searching for wasn't found in his achievements. It was found here, in the simple, everyday moments, with people who cared. And as the night fell, with the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, Jack knew that whatever came next, he wasn't facing it alone anymore. He had Sarah, and Ben, and that was more than enough. The quiet peace of the mansion was shattered one afternoon when a knock at the door changed everything. Jack had just returned from a meeting, his mind still racing with the details of the day. He hadn't expected anything out of the ordinary, but as he entered the foyer, the sound of someone pounding on the front door caught his attention. His heart skipped a beat as he walked toward it, a sense of dread creeping up his spine. Opening the door, Jack was faced with a man, rough-looking, disheveled, and clearly angry. The man's eyes locked onto Jack's, and for a moment, there was silence, heavy and thick with tension. "Where is she?" the man demanded, his voice gruff. "Where's Sarah?" Jack didn't flinch, though he immediately recognized the danger in the man's tone. He had no idea who this person was, but the aggression in his demeanor was enough to raise Jack's hackles. "Who are you?" Jack asked, his voice firm. "I'm her ex," the man spat, his eyes narrowing. "She left me, took off with her kid, and now she's hiding in your fancy mansion. I want her back." The air grew thick with hostility, and Jack instinctively stepped forward, his posture protective. "I don't know what you think you're doing here, but I suggest you leave." The man took a step closer, his hand clenching into a fist. "This isn't your business, rich guy. I want her back, and I'm not leaving without her." Jack's blood boiled, but he held his ground. The last thing he was going to do was let this man intimidate him, especially not when it came to Sarah and Ben. Before Jack could say anything else, Sarah's voice called from behind him. "No, Jack. It's okay." Jack turned around to see Sarah standing at the top of the staircase, her expression calm but resolute. She descended the stairs slowly, holding Ben's hand as he stood by her side, watching the scene unfold. "Sarah," Jack said softly, his voice filled with concern. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah looked at him for a moment, her eyes steady, before turning her attention back to the man at the door. "I'm not hiding, and I'm not afraid of you. I'm done with you. You lost your chance when you walked away from me and Ben." The man's face twisted with anger. "You think you can just walk away from me? You think I'll let you take my son and disappear into your new life?" Sarah's voice hardened. "Ben isn't your son. You've never been there for him. You abandoned us, and you have no right to come here and make demands." Jack stepped to Sarah's side, his arm subtly positioning itself in a protective manner around her. It wasn't just about defending her, but about showing the man that he wasn't going to let him intimidate them any longer. The ex-husband's eyes flickered to Jack, a flicker of realization crossing his face. "You think you can protect her?" he sneered. "This is none of your business." "It is now," Jack replied, his voice unwavering. The confrontation reached a boiling point, but just as it seemed like things might escalate, the man seemed to take a step back. He glanced at Sarah one last time, then turned on his heel and stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. Jack and Sarah watched him leave, the tension in the air dissipating the moment he disappeared from view. Jack turned to Sarah, his heart still pounding in his chest. "You're safe now," Jack said softly, his voice filled with relief. "I won't let anything happen to you or Ben." Sarah took a deep breath, her shoulders sagging as the weight of the moment finally hit her. She turned to Jack, her eyes brimming with emotion. "Thank you, Jack. I don't know what I would have done without you." Jack's eyes softened as he looked at her, the depth of his feelings for her clearer than ever before. "You don't have to thank me. I'll always be here for you." In that moment, as they stood together, Jack realized that his life had truly changed. What had started as a simple act of kindness, a man helping a stranger in the rain, had turned into something much deeper. Something real. As the night settled in and they returned inside, Jack, Sarah, and Ben shared a quiet dinner together. There were no grand speeches, no promises of forever. But in the simplicity of their shared moments, Jack knew that this was what he had been searching for all along. A family. A real connection. And the promise of a future built on love, trust, and the quiet strength of those who cared for one another. As the days passed, Sarah, Jack, and Ben settled into a new rhythm. The past, with all its struggles and hardships, slowly faded into the background, replaced by a sense of peace and belonging. The mansion, once a cold fortress of solitude, had become a home, alive with laughter, warmth, and the quiet comfort of family. For Jack, the lesson was clear: success meant little if it didn't come with meaningful connections. It wasn't wealth or power that filled the emptiness in his heart, it was love, kindness, and the bonds formed with those who mattered most. For Sarah, the lesson was just as powerful: she didn't have to do everything alone. She had the strength to survive, but now she also had the courage to embrace help, to trust others, and to build a future where she and Ben could thrive. Together, they learned that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. If you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales and life lessons. Remember, the smallest acts of kindness can make the biggest difference, and you never know when a simple gesture might change someone's life. If you're inspired by Sarah and Jack's journey, take a moment today to reach out to someone in need, whether it's offering a helping hand or just being there for them. You never know what a difference you can make. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay kind, stay strong, and remember, you're never alone on your journey.